Welcome back to Africa This Week. Well, Africa is a continent rich in cultural heritage, traditional values and superstitious beliefs, which may sometimes mean not caring enough for the living and never speaking ill of the dead. Now, perhaps these are the reasons why eulogies, accolades and commendations trailed the demise and burial of Kofi Annan, renowned diplomat, Nobel laureate, and first African to become Secretary General of the United Nations. Joining me to dig deep on Africa this week is Tony Dania, a lawyer and political analyst. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon.
The man, Kofi Annan.
Yes.
He was a diplomat, he was a Nobel laureate, he was an international statesman. What do you think made him so popular?
You didn't hide that he was also a globally renowned rights activist.
Rights activist.
Yes.
Well, we'll add that to it.
Yes, because he assisted in the establishment of the International Human Rights Commission and the amendment to the International Human Rights, the Charter on International Human Rights. And he has been a man that brought peace to volatile part of the world.
Indeed, and that's what earned him
Some
the peace.
are not even reported. He played a very big role in the peace we're enjoying in Kenya today, but I've not read it anywhere. I'm also aware of the friction between Nigeria and Cameroon, the role he played.
Okay.
Over the boundary between Nigeria and Cameroon.
And Cameroon.
Yeah, so...
Bakassi Peninsula?
Bakassi Peninsula, yeah. So... the eulogies and the commendations are well deserved. They are not pretentious at all. Kofi Annan deserve it. We are proud that, apart from being the first African to rise to that position of Secretary General, we need to also know that he has been working in the United Nations for a very long time before
Indeed,
he became the
has,
Secretary General.
Yeah.
He was actually an Assistant Secretary General in some department. He was at a time the head of finance. You know, he took over from Bitrus Gali and he handed over to Kimoon. So, yeah, and that period between 1997 when he was appointed and 2006 when he left the office, is to date one of the most popular. He's the seventh, but he's so popular. One, maybe because the first African. And
that's
two,
the key one.
Yes,
yeah,
and two, maybe because people never expected that he would perform the way he did. He was bold enough. I call him the global rights activist because where the superpowers roar, he calms them down and tell them the truth to their faces. When
and
America,
in a very calming voice.
yes, when America invaded Iraq, Kofi Annan was bold enough to say it was not sanctioned by the United Nations.
What will he be most remembered for?
Yeah, I think Kofi Annan brought to the notice of the world the malaria problem we have in Africa, and I think that is most commendable. He was able to set up a fund, commission for the purpose of fighting HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. Malaria is more rampant in Africa. So that means he had Africans in mind. So I think that one. Then the peace effort he brought to the world. The fact that he was bold most often, and like you said, in a very polite and calm way, to talk to the superpowers. This made him popular. And when you see him in countries of white, speaking as an international figure and saying the truth eloquently, the way he has always done, and he talks without look. Most of the time, I don't see him read.
Very eloquent, very articulate.
Yes. So he lived 80. You know, we will always want a good person to live forever, if possible.
You know, no one actually really thought he was that old.
Yes, 80 years.
Yeah.
Because he was not looking like
He
80.
didn't look 80.
And he worked until he died.
Yeah.
He was always working. The person that would have been like Kofi Annan, you can compare Nelson Mandela to Kofi Annan.
Yeah.
You can look at...
I was going to ask you that question. Now, Kofi Annan got his first job in the UN as a budget officer. I think you mentioned that for the World Health Organization, that's the WHO.
Yes.
And then he grew to be the 7th UN Secretary General in 1997. How much of his legacies actually made an impact on Africa?
Well, I don't know. The man put in so much effort to elevate Africa from the position he met us. His efforts are appreciated in the area of health, peacekeeping, and human rights. I think we have not learned enough from what I would say Mandela did and what Kofi Annan has done. Even the South Africa, for instance, digressing a little bit, if they have learned from their father, Mandela, they will not attack non-Africans. We are supposed to be one big family in Africa. And other African countries assisted the great during the apartheid regime. So Kofi Annan tried to bring that unity. He was a global citizen, but he tactically assisted Africans. Our leaders, this idea of sit tight on power thing has not stopped. The idea of trying to manipulate existing system has not stopped. The tendency, I don't know whether it is deliberate that our African leaders are refraining from moving forward. Let's else see countries in Africa referred to as advanced countries that other Nigerians has the potential to become an advanced country if we look at issues detached from sentiment. If you look at what are the things that will do that would help the country to grow. One, fix the light. Let the light work. Let there be electricity. The money that will be saved will be in private individual pocket, not the government pocket. Then politics. We are spending so much money on politics and we make it too risky. If you calculate what is spent on politics, elections, if we can remove it, that is, for instance, the parties, the government, INEC put together, it's about a 700 billion naira. And that will go a long way. Are there no ways we can save this cost? You know, somebody suggested tying your PVC to your BVN. But you see, you have to be 18 years before you can start banking and before you can vote. So how many persons that are 18 years and above are bankers? Because you need to have account primarily before you get BVN. I'm just digressing and trying to look at it. But you see, I don't know who we occupy in Africa, who can right now occupy that position. Yeah,
that's the question.
We thought...
Which African do you think can walk in Kofi Annan's shoes?
I don't know. I have not... there is this African man, what is his name? Very... from Somalia that have been... I can't really recall his name now. In Nigeria here, we thought about 10 years, 15 years, 10 years ago, about 10, 12 years ago, honestly speaking, I thought our OBG, Obasanjo, would be able to. Because Obasanjo suffered a little bit in the hand of the military. And when he was a military head of state, he impressed everybody. So he had that good will and background. But when he became the president, civilian president, thereafter, a lot of confusion came in. Misgiving, mistrust, unnecessary politics.
So he definitely can work in
and I think he attempted to contest
a third term.
No. He attempted to contest the seat of the Secretary General of UNO. Yes, there was a time he attempted to. We don't know what happened. So I don't know who can occupy this position. Any person that you think, will do well, you start hearing things that gives you misgivings.
A taint, a dent on their character.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
their time in office.
Maybe we've not searched enough, but I've read so much about Kofi Annan.
How much can he be likened to another great African, Nelson Mandela?
Well, Nelson Mandela's own was restricted to a country, South Africa. Kofi Annan started from United Nations as a staff, was working there, head of budget, assistant secretary general for some years before he became the secretary. Maybe that was why he performed very well. You know?
He had gone through the ropes.
Yes, and if you look at his history in Ghana too, it was a modest and humble upbringing. So I don't know, maybe we should start doing research to know where we can fault him. Because for now, I've not seen anywhere he can be faulted. He was a straightforward man.
He was.
He had opportunity to be political, but he was not. He was objective in all his actions as a United Nations Secretary General. Yes, Nelson Mandela is a global hero too, because he fought against apartheid and he brought freedom to his people. But surprisingly, I don't know what is happening. The Africans in South Africa have refused to learn, have refused to toe the line of Nelson Mandela. How long did the man depart this world that they started attacking Africans?
Kofi Annan had the most befitting burial for a statesman, a diplomat, an international statesman, and a Nobel Peace Prize recipient.
Yes, himself and...
Tony Dania, lawyer and political analyst. I'd like to thank you for joining me on Africa this week. Thank you for your thoughts. Now, so much to say about the man Kofi Annan, who against all odds rose to the pinnacle of international diplomacy, made his mark as a global citizen, and leaves behind a complicated legacy and profound lessons to be learned. At a time when Africa and the world is faced with a new set of complicated challenges, society would always be in need of heroes, some of them finding their voice as advocates, activists, or just everyday people who want to make a difference. That's our package for today, and I have been your guide, Fadisha Lashotunwa. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now.